the biggest truth in filmmaking is there is never enough time and there is never enough money.
In early 2001, Channel 4 decided that it would like to do a film of Twelfth Night. The idea of being able to help to bring it to the screen was something that I wanted to do for a long time. Shakespeare is a permanent international figure who people reinterpret year after year, century after century, and we wanted to be part of that.
Action!
Projector Productions had worked with John Richmond, our commissioning editor at Channel 4, several times. We'd produced 2 feature-length dramas and a short drama documentary for him. And unusually, John Richmond actually came to us and said, you know, I want a version of Twelfth Night for next year. Would you be interested in producing it?
We had a budget in the order of £870,000 available to shoot 100 minutes of drama, which is not a huge budget by the standards of Hollywood.
He brought on Andrew Bannerman, who was a writer he'd worked with before at Channel 4, who also had the right kind of mixture of TV experience but also an academic background, who would, you know, make sure that we were true to Shakespeare's play and the fundamental themes.
We were talking about this and that, and he suddenly said, look, I think there's a possibility that we might be able to do Twelfth Night. And I immediately pricked up my ears and looked excited because it's one of the Shakespeare plays that I like best.
I think we've missed one little shot here.
Tim Supple was our first choice as director. He was renowned as a very imaginative, dynamic theatre director who was really good with actors. He'd done a lot of Shakespeare, including Twelfth Night, on stage.
When the idea of a film was first put to me, I knew that I wanted to make a film that fully updated it, and that would be most alive and most vivid.
So he came on board and we started kind of general research, and one of the most fun parts of filmmaking is the brainstorming process, talking about all the different ideas. We talked about setting it in Soho in London, in the music business, with Orsino as a kind of Puff Daddy and Olivia as Jennifer Lopez, that kind of thing. A lot of practicalities. Filming in places like Soho just meant we, you know, on our budget, we wouldn't be able to afford it. And eventually we sort of, you know, came around to various different ideas, and Andrew went off and did his first draft.
The story of Twelfth Night.
Well, it's fairly mammoth, really. I mean, it's... Oh, goodness gracious. Twelfth Night.
The story of Twelfth Night is about twins who are separated in a storm. The girl, twin, decides to disguise herself as a man in order to survive.
And I don't think for a minute they believe it would get quite so out of hand, and it kind of runs away with them.
Are all the people mad?
There's this whole sequence of people immersed in a kind of passion for another being that they can't have.
Oh, mistress. Make no compare between that love a woman can bear me and that I owe Olivia.
And I beseech you, come again tomorrow.
Olivia falls in love with Cesario, not knowing that she can't have it. Feste is kind of in love with his mistress in a strange kind.
She falls in love with the man she works for, and the other woman also falls in love with her, thinking that she is a man, and it's all very complicated.
I'll be revenged on the whole pack of you.
You couldn't do it with a whole lot of people prancing about in a pretty park with box trees and doublet and hose. It just wasn't going to work like that. It wasn't going to fulfill the commission, the trust that Channel 4 was prepared to put in me.
Come, Signor Fabian.
Nay, I'll come. If I lose scruple of this sport, let me be boiled to death with melancholy.
I felt that we could actually translate it into contemporary terms. And once you've admitted the possibility of that, then all kinds of other things appear in your imagination.
Come, sir, away.
अरे कैसा धन भाई? ये जो तुमने झगड़े में मेरी मदद की, उसके लिए जितना भी धन मेरे पास है, उसका आधा जरूर लौटा दूंगा।
Will you deny me now?
ना मैं तुझे जानता हूँ, तुम्हारी आवाज कभी सुनी हो या तुम्हारा चेहरा कहीं देखा हो, ऐसे भी याद नहीं आता।
Sebastian and Viola, the twins at the centre of the play, we have coming from a country where there is violence, where there is unrest.
In the process of coming over, she's gone through a shipwreck and has been
separated from her and arrives in Illyria, sort of in search of her.
Sebastian and Viola are shown in the way that they assimilate themselves to the society that they come to, and also the values that they themselves bring to that society. And I think that's an interesting point for our multicultural society today.
Obviously, you want to create a piece of work of a certain artistic quality that reflects your vision and the writer's and the director's vision. But unfortunately, really, above and beyond everything, you have to deliver a film on budget. One of the major challenges for a producer is to constantly balance the financial with the artistic importance of what you're doing with relation to the film, and that's an ongoing process. Ultimately, though, your real major responsibility is to deliver the film on time, on budget, and to a certain technical quality. When Tim and Andrew delivered their final draft and John had approved it, and we felt we were ready to move forward and start looking at when we were going to shoot, Victoria Goodall and I went through the script, outlined the major elements, and tried to get a sense of whether the script was filmable for the amount of money that Channel 4 were willing to give us.
They had a figure that they thought they could afford to spend for the production. At that point, I was called in to do the budget. And then, literally, you go through, like, how many actors for how many days? How much is that going to cost us? Are we on equity minimums? Are we going to be, offering principal actors huge amounts of money or not? I don't know, electricians are you likely to need? Does this look like a complicated thing? How many days are you going to need stunts? How many stuntmen will you need stand-ins? All of that you have to break down and then work it out.
When you break down a budget, you essentially break it down according to departments. Firstly, you have your above-the-line costs, which will be the writer, the director, producer and cast. Then below the line costs is everything else.
Sometimes I might have underestimated the amount of electricians I might need and overestimated the amount of something else. So it's a constant process on every level throughout, pre-production and production, always having to balance an overspend with a hopeful underspend somewhere else.
When you finally submit your cost reports, people can go to every single line and see in a very detailed way how much money you're spending on each part of the film. The actors, the crew, the costumes, the sound, the lighting, the camera, the equipment, the sets, blue screen. That gives the channel a basis to look at how we're reconciling the books. And it also means that if something goes terribly wrong, they haven't laid out the entire budget at once. If you don't have a lavish budget, you really are very reliant on fantastic performances, and Tim was known for that.
It was always made clear to me that I should cast the best actors I could for the roles.
It works in different ways. At the beginning of my career, you went up for a lot of jobs, you went for auditions. So either people would call up because they'd seen your photograph if they didn't know your work yet, or they'd perhaps seen something you'd done at drama school and they thought you were right for this part, so they would call up your agency and ask you to come and audition.
By the Lord,
no!
madam!
Art thou mad?
When I started in the theatre, you turn up in a church hall and there'd be a director behind a desk, and you do your speech and you go, "Thank you very much," sometimes not even with looking up. You know, that would be a lot and out the door.
You read for the part. If the director thinks you're right for it, then normally you're cast. I mean, that's it put simply, and that's kind of what happens.
I mean, it's, 50 people for one job kind of thing. What am I saying? It's thousands of people for one job, and yes, that's kind of hard. I mean,
Tim had very strong ideas about the kind of cast he wanted. They were, generally speaking, people who, again, had the right combination of theatre experience, had done Shakespeare before, and had some good, solid television experience.
He asked me in to see about that. He was seeing other people as well, trying to make his mind up on the right team for it.
I kind of thought, God, this is a bit of a challenge, I'll go up for it and see if this kind of comes off, really. So I went in to see Tim, and it took me through a 2-hour audition process. But he was very patient with me and took me through it all. But I approached it like I would approach any part, really.
We'd all known from the very beginning that we wanted it to be a multicultural, multiracial cast that reflected the Britain that we all live in today and would make it more accessible to people who sort of think as Shakespeare as something for white, middle-class, middle-aged audiences.
In New York, where I've worked, and I would say it's about anywhere between 30 and 50 years ahead of us in civil rights, if you like, they call this colourblind casting.
This is where I think the production company have done so well with this production. It is the most multicultural Twelfth Night that I've ever seen. And I think that does bring a very particular flavour to a play which is, in a sense, all about identity and expression.
I think that one of the things that makes a film remarkable is the sheer number of different creative partners you have along the way of the process. So he goes out, you stay on her, getting dressed, back to the camera, he gets that, and they go shot.
Whether they click with them, whether they just feel this person can make the film the way I see it and will have the right kind of ideas and will be a really good collaborator.
The director must be the orchestrator, the conductor of everybody's skills. The most important creative partner pre-production was the production designer, and it's with the production designer that I really hammered out the way the film would look. Right, let's go. Tom Pye is the person with whom I storyboarded the film, the person who had to make the physical environments that we were going to shoot,
Maybe let's try 64.
the person who had to bear most of the brunt of the budgetary restrictions.
And so line of trees, trees, trees. Blue screen that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
The director of photography, Gavin Finney, I knew that person had to be a colleague of great shared instinct, someone who I could work with very well and trust completely.
When Chewie came forward to talk to Parminder, he got cut off. Maybe one more.
Another key person was the first assistant director, and the first assistant runs the shoot. This is Ben Hughes, who seemed to me to have the right kind of temperamental difference to me, I think.
Well, no, I tell you what. I'm just thinking in terms of time, because this is going to take quite a while to do.
Sort of slight sense of army kind of discipline, which is very different to me.
You've just simplified it beyond human endurance, Ben. No, absolutely. But I was just saying anyway.
Sound, a guy called Garth, whose great recommendation for me from his CV was work he'd done with Peter Greenaway, and I think there's some great qualities of sound in Peter Greenaway.
And you couldn't believe the amateurish compression that they'd applied to the soundtrack.
And I think the director has to stand as a central point with everybody working with them to one point of shared creative aim.
Shall I just take you through the shot that we see? Please, yeah.
So we're somewhere like this, here, depending on the bands, and we see...
You have to be completely honest from the very beginning about the financial restraints of a film.
If you had a $50 million production, you'd have shut down the market, or built it, and filled it with hundreds of your own extras, and completely controlled the scene. It's clearly impossible for us to do.
The director, the first assistant director, the director of photography and the sound recordist, and the production designer will go along to particular locations and they will have a look at the practicality of filming there.
And then they stop again and they're talking. They look at the guidebook here, he gives them the money here, and then they say goodbye. And Sebastian walks that way, and Antonio goes back here, and you're going in front of Antonio. Antonio's walking that way.
It's incredibly valuable for all the departments to really check that they're happy, and therefore you don't end up there on the day and find that it's actually impossible to get the right camera in there, or the sound's terrible, or whatever might happen for each department.
And it's a chance to not just think logistically about where you're going to put vans and equipment, but also about how you're going to cover the scene. What are the good parts of the location that you can actually use? And the director will have strong ideas about how they think they're going to stage the scene within that location.
Sebastian walking across there. He knows he's being followed, so he's looking behind him. He looks down, he moves down there and he nips off to the left. Quick. You can see best days coming after him.
It's incredibly valuable to do that early on in the pre-production process when the location manager is looking at different options, because some locations will just be impractical.
Planning, when you're dealing with finances, is everything. And if you don't finish, you can't go back on our kind of budget. So the recce gives you a chance to get ready for the day, and without it, couldn't do it.
It worked for us in both ways, both financially and production-wise and organisational-wise and artistically, to do this mainly as a studio shoot.
Okay, so this is Orsino's room, which serves for all his scenes.
I initially work in pencil very straightforwardly. It's just about speed initially, just to really quickly try and get some sense of an idea down, so that, you know, I can fire that at the director and say, is that interesting to you?
He talks about the sea a lot. You know, he refers to the sea a lot. It's a very important part of his imagination.
How quick and fresh art thou, that notwithstanding thy capacity receiveth as the sea.
Tim also had the idea of wanting to do some digital effects, so we had blue screen shots where you can put in a fake background and stuff. I mean, I think rather expensive films like Moulin Rouge perhaps were references which are a bit alarming references for me early on. You know, that was a $40-something million movie.
There will be points during a production where a producer has to say no, where a director is asking for certain things which they think are integral to the quality of the film. It is a producer's responsibility to manage the budget, and therefore there will be points where you have to say, we really can't do this.
Filming in England would have been impossible continuity-wise to get the light the same, and the light as we wanted it. We'd have been waiting for cloud, waiting for sun, waiting for rain, waiting for the end of the day. It would have been impossible. So it's a very sensible, I think, cost decision to make it as a set, and a very sensible artistic decision to make it as a set.
This is the wall.
Yeah. We taped out the design onto the floor and just did a sort of casual walkthrough. So going, okay, that's where that wall's going to be, that's where the arbour's going to be, that wall you're stuck with, that one I can move, all those kind of things. Again, it's just another sort of process to just see if there's any problems that you hadn't thought of.
When we say paths, it could be there, it can be there, it can be there.
You just have to be very careful that you're directing the percentage of your budget in the areas where it's really going to be used, where you're going to be filming most of your action. It's a big sort of tossing up of all these different factors.
very good. Yep, the whole thing's very good.
As long as you can stay on schedule, you can probably stay on budget as well.
We said we were going to shoot this film in 4 weeks.
If you slip a day a week over a five-week period, that's 5 days you've slipped, and which is an additional week.
You're talking about keeping your entire crew on, keeping the studio on, all the facilities, all the equipment. It's a huge amount of money that a small film cannot easily absorb.
370, take 3, pick up.
There's a certain amount of how the schedule works out is dictated by sets, by lighting requirements, by location availability.
A first assistant director will always have up their sleeve the scenes that could be lost, the amount of shots, the different angles. These are all things that a first will look at. On a day-to-day basis, he will know where he wants to be by lunchtime. And if not, he will sit down with the director and the DOP and say, we're in trouble, we've got to find a better way to complete the day.
The more pressure you put on some directors in terms of time, the more stubborn they become. Other directors can't work under pressure at all. They tend to slow right down to an absolute grinding halt. But most do have a very good eye on the ball, and they realise that they only have a certain amount of time to achieve what they have to achieve, and off they go and do it.
It's not just a question of money, it becomes a question of availability, actor availability. They may be going on to another project. The sets, if you need to pick up a major scene, your set may not even exist 2 weeks later if you're striking it and rebuilding something else. So, generally speaking, you cannot afford to not complete your day.
There's a certain time for bantering, time for jokes. So at times you can be everyone's friend, but at other times as a first AD, you're everyone's enemy as well. Because just when they want to take the foot off the gas and sit down and have a giggle, you've got to stop them and slap them down. But I always try to make sure that if you've had to have a go at someone during the day, they don't go home with a bad feeling. You know, you always clear the air before the end of the day.
Ultimately, when a broadcaster agrees to finance a film, they are giving a producer the power to manage the budget. And therefore you are really saying, you know, I will make this film on budget and I will not incur any risk for you as the investor. And therefore you always have that constant struggle.
You might argue that in some ways the discipline of having a modest budget encourages ingenuity, and on a project of this quality and this depth, the satisfaction of that is considerable.
The challenge of less money can create better filmmaking, more imagination. It pushes people to the limits, and as long as people have the passion and the inclination to work that extra bit and think round problems, you can often find that the film is so much better for it.